It didn't start with a gunshot, nor the roar of a cannon. It started with a sound so quiet it was nearly imperceptible. A whisper in the deep of night, a nod in the shadows, a map not drawn on paper, but carved into memory and passed along through song. Its name was the Underground Railroad, and it didn't run on steam. It ran on hope. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Echoes in Time. Tonight, we aren't tracing the paths of kings or the battle lines of great wars. We are walking a road of quiet courage, following an invisible network woven by ordinary people who did extraordinary things in the face of brutal injustice. Before we begin, if you believe these are the stories that need to be told, please help them reach more people by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell. Now, I want you to consider something. Have you ever truly thought about what courage looks like? Not on a battlefield with flags flying, but in the quiet, desperate moments, in the secret acts of defiance performed in darkness, simply because they are right. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. In the early and mid-19th century, the institution of slavery in the American South was a grim and brutal fact of life. But within that landscape of despair, a secret network began to take shape. The Underground Railroad was not a real railroad. There were no tracks, no locomotives. It was a metaphor, a whispered name for a sprawling, clandestine web of people, places, and plans. The routes were etched into memory, following rivers and winding through dense forests. The safe houses, known as stations, were disguised as ordinary farms, but they held secret cellars behind false walls, attics with hidden trapdoors, and wagons with false bottoms. The guides, called conductors, were often free black Americans, white abolitionists, and most powerfully, formerly enslaved people who had made the journey themselves. They guided freedom seekers, known as passengers, on foot, by night, using only the stars, especially the North Star, to navigate. They slept in haystacks and hollowed-out trees. Every snap of a twig, every bark of a dog, could signal the end. A wrong knock on a door could mean capture, torture, or death. And yet, the system worked. And it grew. Word of mouth became the most powerful signal, using songs, quilts, and code words to mark trusted houses. A lantern hung in a specific window, a particular flower planted in the yard. Everything had a hidden meaning. It was not a centralized organization. There was no headquarters. It was a living organism, built on bravery and shaped by secrecy, and it relied entirely on trust. A person risking everything to run had to place their life in the hands of strangers, in strange lands, with no guarantee of safety. And still, they ran. Thousands of people escaped through this invisible network. Behind every single escape was an untold number of quiet heroes, farmers, ministers, teachers, and families who opened their doors, shared their bread, and risked imprisonment or worse for the freedom of a stranger. This was not a rebellion of arms, but a revolution of conscience. In the deep silence of those nights, footsteps moved through cornfields and creeks, inching toward freedom. The railroad didn't run on steam. It ran on whispers and hope. She stood barely 5 feet tall, with a soft voice and a scar on her head that never let her sleep through the night. But when Harriet Tubman moved, people followed, and chains were broken. Born into slavery in Maryland around 1822, Harriet Tubman knew the brutality of bondage firsthand. She had been beaten, whipped, and nearly killed before she ever reached adulthood. As a young girl, an overseer threw a heavy iron weight at another slave, but it struck Harriet in the head. The injury left her with a lifetime of severe headaches, seizures, and vivid, dreamlike visions which she believed were divine messages from God. In 1849, Harriet escaped. Alone, she followed the North Star on foot, a harrowing journey of nearly 90 miles through treacherous marshes and woods. To survive would have been enough for anyone. But Harriet wasn't just a survivor. She was a liberator. She went back, and then she went back again. And again, over the course of a decade, Harriet Tubman returned to the South an estimated 13 times, personally guiding more than 70 enslaved people to freedom, including her own elderly parents. She never lost a single passenger. Not one person under her care was ever captured. It was a feat so extraordinary, it became legend even in her own lifetime. She carried a pistol, not just for protection against slave catchers, but as a tool of resolve. She would not allow anyone, weakened by fear or exhaustion, to turn back. The stakes were too high. A single person returning could betray the entire route, endangering everyone. If you were with Harriet, you kept moving forward. They called her Moses, after the biblical figure who led his people out of bondage in Egypt. Like Moses, she relied on faith, but also on meticulous planning, uncanny timing, and a network of trusted allies. She knew which homes to stop at, which rivers to cross at which time, and which towns were too dangerous to approach. She moved at night, often in the spring or fall, when the longer nights provided more cover. She used coded songs and bird calls to communicate. Wade in the water was a reminder to travel in rivers, to throw hunting dogs off the scent. A certain hymn could signal that it was safe to come out of hiding. Harriet Tubman eventually became one of the most wanted people in the South. At one point, a reward of 40,000 was offered for her capture, an astronomical sum at the time, but no one ever turned her in. Later in life, she would work as a nurse, a scout, and a spy for the Union Army during the Civil War, and a suffragist. But it was her time as a conductor on the Underground Railroad that forged her legend, not as a myth, but as a towering symbol of what one determined person can do against a system built to crush them. Harriet Tubman did not single-handedly free a nation. She simply refused, time and again, to leave anyone behind. There were no printed maps, no train schedules, no road signs that read, "Freedom, next exit." The Underground Railroad was built entirely on memory, trust, and a silent, shared language of symbols. Every landmark had to be memorized, not written down. Every safe house had to look like any other on the outside, while being something entirely different within. The routes were fluid, changing with the seasons and the level of threat. Some wound through the dense forests and swamps of the Carolinas. Others followed the great rivers of Ohio, or the twisting backroads of Pennsylvania. For many, the ultimate destination was Canada, where law could not drag them back. This is where the genius of the system truly shone. The safe houses, or stations, were often the homes of abolitionists, Quakers, free black families, or sympathetic farmers. These homes might contain hidden rooms behind staircases, trapdoors in kitchen floors, or false walls leading to candle-lit cellars. Some even used hollowed-out wagons with false bottoms to transport passengers in broad daylight. But how did they communicate all of this without tipping off slave owners and authorities? Through code. A spiritual sung in the fields could hold a double meaning. Follow the drinking. Gourd was more than music. It was a set of directions. The drinking gourd referred to the Big Dipper constellation, whose handle points to Polaris, the North Star, a celestial compass guiding people north. Quilts hung on fences might display patterns that indicated safety. A log cabin pattern could mean a safe place to stay. A tumbling blocks pattern might signal it was time to move on. A lantern in a window, a certain flower in a pot. These were the quiet signs of sanctuary. Everything was ordinary, and yet everything was part of something extraordinary. If this story of courage and ingenuity is moving you, please take a moment to hit the like button. It's a small way to show that these vital histories deserve to be heard and remembered. Freedom was never free. For those who stepped onto the Underground Railroad, the price was staggering. Paid not just in footsteps, but in fear, silence, and sacrifice. Runaway slaves risked far more than capture. Laws like the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 made it legal and profitable for anyone, even in free northern states, to seize an escaped slave and return them for a bounty. The law required citizens to assist in captures and punish those who helped fugitives with heavy fines and prison time. For the escapees, every movement was fraught with danger. Patrols on horseback scoured woods and roads. Dogs were trained to hunt human scent. Wanted posters bore descriptions, scars, skin tone, height, and offered rewards tempting enough to turn neighbors into informants. And yet, they ran. Families were often torn apart. A mother might escape with one child, leaving others behind with the agonizing promise to return. Some did. Many could not. But the danger was not only for those running. The conductors and allies who opened their doors were also hunted. People like Levi Coffin, a white Quaker businessman in Indiana, whose home became known as the Grand Central Station of the Underground Railroad, helped an estimated 3,000 fugitives. Knowing he could lose his business, his home, and his freedom, free Black Americans faced even greater risks. If caught assisting runaways, they were often accused of being fugitives themselves and kidnapped back into slavery. Still, they persisted, because for many, the question was not whether it was legal, it was whether it was right. These were not professional spies or trained revolutionaries. They were farmers, teachers, ministers, mothers, and children, ordinary people doing extraordinary things in the face of terrifying consequences. The Underground Railroad was remarkable not just because it existed, but because, despite the immense cost, it never stopped. Every lantern lit in a window was an act of defiance. Every door opened was a quiet revolution. In the heart of many Black communities, both slave and free, stood one building that was more than a place of worship. It was shelter, it was strategy, it was a signal hub, the church, for those fleeing slavery and for those helping them. The Black church was both a fortress and a flame. While slave owners allowed some religious gatherings, they often restricted unsupervised worship, fearing that spirituals might stir rebellion. They were right to be afraid. Those songs carried more than faith. They carried information. Swing low. Sweet Chariot wasn't just a hymn about going to heaven. It was a message that a chariot, a conductor, or a wagon was coming soon to take someone home to the north. Wade in the Water advised fugitives to travel through rivers and streams to erase their scent trail from hunting dogs. These songs were sung slowly, rhythmically, appearing harmless, even soothing, to white overseers. But among the enslaved, they were passing operational instructions in plain sight. Church basements, especially in the North, often became hiding places, rooms tucked beneath the sanctuary, where food and bedding were hidden behind choir robes and hymnals. Ministers sometimes served as conductors, using their sermons to alert congregants about upcoming movements or dangers, cloaked in biblical language that doubled as a briefing. In Philadelphia, Mother Bethel AM Church became a cornerstone of abolitionist activity. In Ohio, churches along the border were known as stations, not just for their sermons, but for their secret rooms. The church gave more than shelter. It gave a voice, a code, and hope wrapped in harmony. For many who rode the invisible rails, freedom didn't come with the first step off the plantation, nor with the last safe house in Ohio. It came across a border that marked more than just geography. It marked true safety. It marked survival. It marked Canada under British law. Canada had abolished slavery by 1834. Once fugitives crossed into Ontario, often via Detroit or Buffalo, they were finally beyond the grasp of American slave catchers. There, they could breathe, not always easily, but legally. That difference meant everything. The journey's final leg was brutal. Rivers had to be crossed in rowboats under the cover of night. Some waited for winter, walking across the thick ice. And yet, they came, an estimated 30 cars, 1,000 to 40. 0,000 formerly enslaved people made it to Canada. Communities formed in places like Windsor and St. Catharines. Harriet Tubman herself lived in St. Catharines for years, using it as a safe base for her return trips. For her and thousands of others, Canada wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning of a life. Imagine that moment. Your feet touch foreign soil. Your heart is still pounding from the fear. You turn and look back across the river, back across your past. Then you look forward, and for the first time in your life, no one owns you. You are free. The Civil War came, and with it, the Emancipation Proclamation and the legal end of slavery in the United States. But long before Lincoln signed a single document, long before armies clashed at Gettysburg, freedom was already being claimed in secret, by torchlight, by footstep, by those who ran, and by those who reached back to help others follow. The Underground Railroad was never a building or a monument. Its legacy was carved into the soil, the stars, and the memories of those who walked its paths. It lived in whispered stories, passed down through generations. Today, its roots are honored in museums and memorials, but its true legacy is more profound than any single location. It lies in the powerful idea that ordinary people, when faced with monstrous injustice, can find extraordinary ways to resist. Without armies, without laws, without official power, they resisted with quilts and songs, with lanterns in windows, with unlocked doors and unspoken trust. They answered the question again and again, not what can I do, but what must I do? That is the deepest lesson of the Underground Railroad. Not just that freedom is precious, but that courage does not always roar. Sometimes it is the quietest voice in the room. Sometimes it is a hand held out in a dark field after midnight. The echoes of that railroad live on in every act of conscience that defies cruelty, in every effort to protect the vulnerable, to speak the truth, to offer safe passage when the world is burning. Because injustice may no longer wear the same chains, but it still walks among us. And so, too, must the conductors. Thank you for joining me on this journey. What lesson from these quiet heroes resonates most with you today? Let me know in the comments. If you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing and sharing it. Until next time, stay curious and listen for the echoes. Forget what you know about mythology. Forget pantheons on sun-drenched mountaintops and gods throwing lightning bolts from golden chariots. The stories we are exploring tonight are not born of thunder, but of silence. They are carved by wind on ice, whispered in the endless twilight of the Arctic night, and carried in the warmth of a storyteller's breath. This is a world where the line between a spirit and a snowdrift is dangerously thin. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Echoes in Time. Tonight, we travel north, far north, to a world of ice and spirits, to explore the profound and beautiful mythology of the Inuit people. Before we step into this frozen world, if you value stories that connect us to the deepest roots of human experience, please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our future journeys. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a place so vast and so quiet that you could almost hear the world breathing? Tell me about that feeling in the comments below. Now, find a warm place, settle in, and let the silence of the Arctic speak. Inuit mythology doesn't begin with a bang. It emerges slowly, like a figure appearing through a blizzard. It lives in the snow, in the shifting ice, in the vast, unbroken spaces where words are few and meaning is everything. For thousands of years, the Inuit people have inhabited one of the harshest environments on Earth. Survival here depends not on conquering nature, but on a deep and abiding respect for it. Their mythology is a direct reflection of this truth. These stories are not simple entertainment. They are survival guides, teaching how to live, how to hunt, how to die, and how to honor the delicate balance between humans, animals, and the spirits that watch over them all. The line between the natural and the supernatural is not just thin here. At times, it does not exist at all. The wind can carry a message, the ocean can hold a grudge, and the animals can hear your thoughts. Unlike many mythologies that place their gods in a distant heaven, the spirits of the Inuit world live among the people. They are intimate, personal, and ever-present. Elders would tell these tales in low, rhythmic voices inside snow houses, or igloos, wrapped in caribou fur, with the wind howling just outside the ice block walls. A story about a raven wasn't just about a bird. It taught the value of cleverness and the danger of hubris. A story about a seal spirit wasn't just a ghost story. It was a sacred reminder to thank the animal for its life, a life given so that you might live. This is not a mythology of the past. It is a living echo in the ice, beneath the frozen waves of the Arctic Ocean, in a kingdom of cold silence and drifting bones. Lives. Sedna. She is not a goddess in the classical sense. She does not sit on a throne or wear a crown of pearls. She is tangled in the currents. Her long, dark hair, a swirling mass of kelp and sorrow. Her hands forever gone, lost to a terrible betrayal. Sedna is arguably the most powerful and important spirit in the Inuit pantheon. She is the mother of all marine animals. The seals, the walruses, the whales, and the fish are all said to have been born from her body. She holds the power of life and death over the people, for if she is angered, the hunt will fail, the sea will go quiet, the animals will vanish, and starvation will follow, as surely as the long winter night. Her story, like all oral traditions, shifts from region to region, but the bones of it remain the same. Once, she was a beautiful young human woman, living with her father. In many tellings, she was proud and rejected all the hunters who came to seek her hand in marriage. One day, a handsome stranger arrived. Some say he was a fulmar, a seabird, disguised as a man. He promised her a life of comfort, with warm furs and plentiful food. Sedna, intrigued, agreed to go with him, but he lied. He took her to his home, a windswee rock, a filthy nest where she was fed only raw fish and clothed in rags. She was miserable. Her father, hearing her cries on the wind, set out in his kayak to rescue her. He took her from the nest, and they began to paddle home. But the fulmar, seeing his wife had been taken, flew into a rage. He and his fellow birds stirred up a monstrous storm. The sea crashed around the tiny kayak, threatening to capsize it. Her father, terrified for his own life, made a horrific choice. He decided to sacrifice his daughter to the angry sea. He threw Sedna overboard. She screamed, clinging desperately to the side of the kayak, her fingers frozen to the gunwale. But her father, his heart turned to ice by fear, took his knife and cut off her fingers, one by one. As each severed joint fell into the churning, black water, it transformed. Her fingertips became the small seals, her middle knuckles became the bearded seals, and her largest knuckles became the mighty whales and walruses. Losing her grip, Sedna sank into the abyss, but she did not die. She became something else, something ancient and powerful. Now, she dwells in the shadowy realm of Adlivun, the underworld at the bottom of the sea. She is the guardian of the animals she gave birth to. When hunters are greedy, when they are disrespectful, when they kill more than they need or fail to perform the proper rituals, the tangles in her hair grow tighter, filled with the filth and broken taboos of humanity. This enrages her, and she withholds the animals. When this happens, only an angakuk, a shaman, can save the people. The shaman must enter a trance and make the dangerous spiritual journey down to Sedna's realm. There, they must approach the grieving, angry goddess and perform the most intimate of tasks. They must comb her long, tangled hair, soothing her, untangling the knots of human disrespect. If they succeed, Sedna is calmed. Her fury subsides. and she releases the animals back to the hunters. Sedna's story is a powerful, brutal lesson. She represents the memory of betrayal, the pain of loss, and the absolute necessity of balance. She is the reason hunters must give thanks, why no part of an animal is wasted, and why a respectful silence follows a kill. She is the ocean's grief and its mercy. And even now, under the ice, they say Sedna waits, her hair flowing in the deep currents, listening. In the Inuit world, animals are not just animals. They are watchers, teachers, and spirits wrapped in fur and feather. To survive in the Arctic is to live among beings that are powerful, intelligent, and deeply aware. You do not conquer them. You enter into a contract with them, and sometimes they speak back. Inuit mythology is filled with stories of animals that walk between worlds. Some are shapeshifters, appearing as humans in animal form, or animals who shed their skin to walk among people. These beings carry both wisdom and immense danger. The raven, or Qallupilluit, is one of the most enduring figures. He is a creator, trickster, clever, and unpredictable. In some stories, it is Raven who, tired of the endless darkness, steals the sun, moon, and stars from a selfish chief who kept them locked in a box. He brings light to the world, but often through trickery and for his own amusement. Raven is not evil, but he is never entirely safe. He is a constant reminder that nature is chaotic and does not always follow human rules or expectations. The polar bear, Nanook, is not just a mighty predator. He is the embodiment of the hunting spirit. He is sometimes a guardian, sometimes a man living in a bear's skin. To hunt and kill a polar bear is to enter into a sacred pact. The hunter must show immense respect, honoring the bear's spirit, often leaving offerings and ensuring its bones are treated with care. To fail in this is to offend the spirit of all bears, ensuring future hunts will fail. Every creature, from the seal to the fox to the caribou, is believed to possess an inua, a spirit or soul. This is the essence of the being. If an animal is mistreated or killed without respect, its inua can return in anger. There are countless tales of animals who come back, disguised as people, to test or punish hunters who have forgotten gratitude. It is a worldview that fosters a profound connection to the environment. Humans are not masters of nature here. They are the younger, more vulnerable siblings in a very old and powerful family, and the animals are the elders. If you are finding this journey into the spirit world as fascinating as I am, please consider hitting the like button. It is a small gesture that helps these ancient stories find new ears in our modern world. In the vast Arctic, where the land can seem empty, and the sky feels close enough to touch, there are those who can walk between the seen and the unseen. They are not priests or kings. They are something older, wilder. They are the Angakui, the shamans of the Inuit. An Angakuk is not chosen lightly. Some are born with signs, unusual dreams, visions, or surviving an impossible accident. Others undergo a long, grueling apprenticeship, but all must learn to walk the razor's edge between the world of the living and the world of spirits, between sanity and madness. Their role is both healer and diplomat. When a person falls ill and no herb can cure them, the Angakuk is called. When the caribou vanish from their migration routes or endless storms prevent hunting, it is the Angakuk who must travel to find out why. Their journey is not made on foot, but by soul, through the rhythmic, hypnotic beat of a drum. Through chanting and controlled breathing, they enter a trance state. Their spirit leaves their body and travels to other realms, worlds hidden beneath the sea, inside the sky, or behind the land itself. In these spirit realms, the Angakuk meets beings that no ordinary person should face. The ghosts of the angry dead, the spirits of offended animals, and the great forces of nature like Sedna. Only the Angakuk has the power and training to negotiate with these powerful entities, to soothe their anger, and restore balance to the human world. but the price is heavy. The Angakuk often lives a life apart, respected, but also feared. Their eyes see too much. They hear voices on the stillest day. They carry the spiritual burdens of their entire community. They are not gods. They can make mistakes. And some, it is said, can be corrupted by power or fail to return from a spirit journey, becoming lost between worlds. But in times of crisis, it is the Angakuk who is called upon. They sit by the fire, their eyes close, and their soul slips away, across the ice, into the darkness, toward the heart of the unseen. Inuit myths are more than entertainment. They are survival maps for the soul. Woven through every tale of spirits and monsters is a practical warning, a lesson forged by ice and hunger. These are morality tales with teeth. Take, for example, the story of the Qallupilluit or Qallupilluit. These are humanoid creatures said to live beneath the sea ice. They wait silently near breathing holes, listening. They have long, webbed fingers and carry a large pouch on their back called an amautik, like those used by Inuit women to carry children. If a child wanders too close to the shore alone or walks on unsafe ice, a Qallupilluit will reach up, snatch them, pull them under the water, and keep them forever. This isn't just a story to scare children. It's a life-saving lesson. Do not wander off alone. Stay away from the treacherous ice edge. The Qallupilluit watches where your parents cannot. Or consider the tale of the Mahaha, a thin, icy demon that stalks the tundra, always grinning, always giggling. It does not kill with claws or teeth. It tickles with its long, cold fingers. It tickles its victims mercilessly until they die of laughter, frozen in a final, horrifying grin. It sounds absurd, but it teaches a vital lesson about the Arctic. Never underestimate the cold. Hypothermia can bring on a state of delirium and euphoria just before death. The Mahaha is a warning that some of the deadliest dangers come with a smile. These stories reinforce the importance of community, of listening to elders, and of following the ancient taboos. In this world, a single mistake, a single act of disrespect, doesn't just bring bad luck. It can invite a very real, very cold death. The myths feel strange to outsiders, dark, cold, often brutal, but they are precise, effective, and remembered, and they still echo in a child's healthy fear of thin ice, and in a hunter's quiet prayer of thanks before the kill. The world has changed. Snowmobiles have largely replaced dog sleds. Satellites streak across a sky where once only spirits danced. Even the aurora borealis is explained in textbooks now. Solar particles, geomagnetic storms. And yet, the old stories remain. Inuit mythology, once passed only from mouth to ear beside whale oil lamps, has survived colonization, missionary pressure, and the long, painful shadow of residential schools. Today, Inuit artists carve Sedna and the raven into soapstone and whalebone, their forms both ancient and modern. Children in Nunavut still learn about the Qallupilluit from their grandparents. Filmmakers and writers are bringing these ancient figures to new global audiences. These are not relics. They are tools of cultural survival. They are identity, stitched together from starlight and resilience. In a world where climate change threatens traditional ways of life, and screens glow brighter than firelight, these myths ground the Inuit people. They are a reminder that the land has rules, that spirits still walk quietly among us, and that the most important lessons are not written down, but lived. The stories speak of resilience, of grief, of the hard beauty of survival, and of a deep, symbiotic relationship with the planet. So, if you ever find yourself in the far north, away from the noise and the lights of the south, pause for a moment. Let the wind pass. Listen to the ice groan. Watch the sky. You might just hear a story in that silence, old, unfinished, and still breathing, just like the people who tell it. What can these ancient stories, born of ice and respect, teach our modern, warming world? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of the Arctic. If these stories resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing them. Until next time, stay curious and listen for the echoes.